Hey guys, my name is Marisa. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. And it's late. I've been working all day on stuff, and but the last few days I've had just this word kind of forming in me. It was like I didn't know. I knew it was there. I knew it was like something I was like just wrestling with, and then tonight as I was finishing my work and just kind of settling down, excuse me, it just came to me, and it was so simple, but it was perfect. And I feel like a lot of people might be going through this right now in this season. So God's made you a promise. So this is for people who are wrestling with the promises of God, who like God has made you a promise, and you've been contending for that, standing on the faithfulness of God and believing him at his word. But I feel like right now it seems like all hope is lost. The things you had been contending for seem to be slipping through your fingers, like you know, just like it's not going to work out. You're like right there, you can almost taste it, but it seems like it's just, as closer you get to it, the more it dissolves right in front of your face. And so I had been wrestling with this word for a minute, and then tonight the Lord said to me in my ear, I swore by myself. And I knew exactly what he meant. I knew exactly what he meant. And he was talking about Genesis chapter 22. And so I want to take you there for a minute. And I want to read you the story of Abraham and Isaac. Not the whole thing, but I'll just go ahead and recap the story. So God made Abraham a promise, and he swore of himself. He swore on his own, on who he is. He made a promise to Abraham to give him a son. But it took years and years and years for this thing to come to fruition. And Sarah was old, like 90 something years old when she gave birth to Isaac. And Abraham was old. And they had even tried to fulfill the promise on their own and had Ishmael before. And they had to go through that whole ordeal and send Ishmael away. Well, they finally had their own son, just like the Lord promised. And you know, even after, because God had not just promised him a son, but through this promised son, descendants, nations would be born from him. So it wasn't just like, oh, I'm promising you a son. No, God had promised him nations. And so the promise was much bigger than a son, right? This was a legacy. This is something so much bigger than that. And so God tells Abraham to take Isaac, his son, his only son, up the mountain to sacrifice him. And it's very interesting. I want to read you this one little part out of 22. He says, now after these things, God tested the faith and commitment of Abraham. And he said to him, Abraham, and he answered, here I am. God said, take now your son, your only son of promise, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will tell you. So Abraham got up early. Hold on, let me just say about this one part. He says, take your son, your only son of promise, whom you love. This is something that you love. Like, this is your promise. It's like in your grasp, it's in your hands. And he's saying, go up and give it, kill it, sacrifice it, lay it down, right? Abraham loves him. He genuinely loves him. He doesn't want to let him go. He doesn't want him to die. This is the thing he had been waiting for all those years, and it finally has it, and it's like slipping through his hands, right? But watch this. Abraham got up in the morning early, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac, and he split the wood for the burnt offering. So he's preparing to sacrifice him. And he got up and went to the place of which God had told him. And on the third day of travel, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Abraham said to his servants, "Settle down and stay here with the donkey. The young man and I will go over there and worship God, and we will come back to you." He didn't say, "I will come back to you." He said, "We will come back to you." Even in this statement, he's showing, man, I don't know what God's got planned, but I know that he promised me the son, and he was standing on that promise. He promised me nations from this son, not Ishmael, this one. And so he said, "We will come back," because he was uttering the faith in the word of God. I know what you said, God, but I know what you said before that, when you swore to me, and he was standing. That was his that one little word, "We will come back to you." That was a declaration of faith. And sometimes all you have is a "we." All you have is one little word, one little, just, I know what it looks like, God. I know this seems like, devastating. It looks like the end. It looks like death. But we, just that one word of faith, it's such a little word, but man, that one little tiny "we" will come back to you. He was declaring everything in that one little sentence, that one little word, 2 letters, "we." Anyway, let me read this. Sorry. He goes, "Then Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on the shoulders of Isaac. He made Isaac carry the wood. And he took the fire pot in his own hand and the sacrificial knife, and the 2 of them walked together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, he said, "My father," he said, "Here I am, my son." And Isaac said, "Look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "My son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering." And the 2 walk together. And he's reassuring, he's re-proclaiming that faith. God will provide himself. But not only that, he's also prophesying that God will provide himself as the lamb, because this whole story is a picture of Jesus and God offering up Jesus, right? Like the image of the Father offering up the Son, and he's prophesying God will provide himself as the lamb. God will come as the lamb. So, but that's not for this story, but that's a little side story. But so again, he's reestablishing that faith, that declaration of, I don't know how he's gonna do it, but he's gonna do it. I don't know, because I know what he told me, and I don't know how this is gonna play out, but I know what you told me. So they go up, and he builds the altar. He puts the wood on the altar. He binds his son to the altar. And just when he's ready to go through with the deal, the angel of the Lord, who is Jesus in the Old Testament, it's whenever you see capital angel of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, and the angel is never given a name, it's just the angel of the Lord. This is a pre-incarnate, it's called a Christophany. It's where Jesus shows up in the Old Testament. So it's an appearance of Jesus in the Old Testament. It really doesn't mean angel in the Hebrew. It's really a title that means messenger of God, or God's message. Jesus is God's message. He is the message of God. And so he says, "Do not reach out with your knife against the boy and do nothing to harm him, for I now know that you fear God with reverence. And since you have not withheld from me your son, your only son of promise." And then when Abraham looked around, he saw the ram caught in the bush. And so they went back and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of Isaac. And so Abraham named the place, "The Lord will provide." Jireh, Jehovah Jireh. That's where God gets the name Jehovah Jireh. He will provide. God is my provider. So in Hebrew you say Jehovah Jireh. That's how you say that. There are no J's in Hebrew. So if you ever are curious, if you ever see a J, it means Yah in Hebrew. Okay, so God provided. And then the angel of the Lord Jesus called out to Abraham a second time and said, by myself I have sworn an oath. On the basis of who I am, I have sworn an oath, declares the Lord, that since you have done this thing and have not withheld from me your son, your only son of promise, indeed I will greatly bless you, and I will multiply your seed like the stars of heaven and like the sands of the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gates of their enemies. Through your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have heard and obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his servants, and they got up and went to Beersheba. Him and Isaac went back down the mountain, just like he said, we'll be back. And they were. In this story, you see God, and he swears by himself. And this is the word I had burning in my spirit for days, and I just didn't know the appropriate story. God says, you cannot fail a promise that you did not make. Let me say that again. You cannot fail a promise you did not make. All you have to do is believe God. If he said, I will complete the work I started in you, guess what? It's his work to complete, and it's his word he has to fulfill. That's his promise. If he says, I will, whatever the promise is, I will make you a father of many nations, that's his promise that he made you. Your job is to believe him at his word, no matter what it looks like in the natural. It could look like death. It could look like it's over. It could look like you've messed up beyond reproach. It could look like this is it. I've ruined everything. Me and my big mouth. Me and my rash decisions. Me and my emotions. We've ruined it all. And God says, no. I made you the promise, and I'll bring it to pass. So, and that's my encouragement for you today. So many times we want to feel like we have the power to fail God. And it's like, do you know how big he is? Do you know how amazing he is? Do you know how mighty he is, that he can do anything? There's nothing that is impossible for him. And yet we think we're in control of anything. And the biggest lesson I've learned this year is that I'm not in control of anything. And lately, he's asked me to lay down some things at his feet that I was trying to control. I was trying to control the situation because I desperately wanted it. I wanted this situation to work out. I wanted, it was in my grasp, right? And I was trying to force my will, and he told me to step back and sit down and let him take hold of it. And if I truly believe him, then I have to do that. I have to just say, here, Lord, it's yours. Take it, make it work, fix it, because I can't. I'm just going to get in my own way. I'm just going to mess things up. And sometimes that it's all we have to do is step back and say, Lord, I believe you. I believe you at your promise. I know you can handle this situation. And that's where our submission to God comes into play, and our obedience to his word, and our obedience to letting him be God in our lives, and letting him take the reins and really just say, okay, God, I'm not going to mess this up. Like, there's nothing I can do. You already knew what I was going to do before I did it. But sometimes we still need to take a step back and just release it to him. Even though it may look dead, he can raise it from the dead. And that was Abraham's belief. He's like, he promised me nations from the sun. So even if I have to burn him, he can bring him back from the dead. Like, it doesn't matter. We are coming back down this mountain. And so whatever God's promised you, a spouse or a job or a purpose or finances, resources, and I don't care what it looks like. I mean, it could look completely hopeless, but there's a we in that story somewhere. And just muster up a wee amount of faith and believe God at his word. And that's really what I want to encourage you with today. It's late, I'm tired, and but really just wanted to say that God is faithful, and he swears by himself of who he is, and so if he's made you a promise, he's already seen how this plays out. He already knows that it will be fulfilled. Otherwise he wouldn't have spoken it to you and confirmed it to you and let you dream about it and got your hopes up. You know, he wouldn't have done all these things if it wasn't destined to be. He's not an evil, maniacal God. He sees the end from the beginning. He speaks forth what is already done, because where he's standing, it already is done. So that's the word I want to leave you with today. You can't follow a promise you didn't make. And by himself, he will fulfill his word. You just got to keep that strength and keep that faith and keep the obedience. And I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.